The tires hit the powder line like a match to dry grass. In the next heartbeat, a gray SUV tore down the farm lane, flinging a bright smear across its own doors and fenders. Seconds later, a motion camera caught the plate in razor clarity. And before the dust even settled on the hay bales, red and blue lights rolled into the field, turning the shortcut into a dead end. Eli had bought the small farm for quiet, not for profit. A modest spread of pasture, an old equipment shed, and enough room for a few goats and a rotating patchwork of crops were all he wanted after years of city noise. The land sat along the edge of a newer subdivision, the kind with identical mailboxes and a proud HOA that treated order like a religion. Between Eli's fence line and the back of the neighborhood ran a narrow access lane, an old farm service route that had been turned into a convenient shortcut long before he arrived. The paperwork said it was a limited easement for utility access and emergency vehicles, not a resident racetrack. In practice, some neighbors treated it like their private bypass around the main road. At first, Eli tolerated the occasional car. He even improved the shoulder with gravel to keep ruts from forming near his irrigation line. The warning signs were subtle: tire tracks cutting too close to the pasture gate, trash appearing in the ditch, and one particular SUV that always seemed to pass like it was late to prove something. The first real incident came on a morning when the farm felt fragile and new. Fresh straw in the goat shelter, a repaired latch on the pasture gate, and a bucket of feed balanced on Eli's hip. The SUV blasted through again, close enough that dust coated the fence wire and the animals snapped their heads up in alarm. One young goat spooked, slipped on the packed dirt, and limped for days. Eli had seen enough to know it wasn't just rude, it was dangerous. He placed reflective slow markers along the lane and set a simple warning sign near the entry. By the next evening, the sign was gone, ripped clean from its post, tossed into the drainage ditch like a joke. The SUV returned, faster, the driver apparently emboldened by the silent message that somebody on the neighborhood side felt untouchable. Then the HOA entered the picture, as if it owned the horizon. A violation notice appeared at Eli's mailbox, claiming his fencing was visually disruptive and his gravel shoulder was an unapproved alteration impacting community aesthetics. Eli wasn't an HOA member, and his deed said nothing about their authority. Still, the letters kept coming, each one more confident than the last, as if volume could replace jurisdiction. Within a week, county code enforcement showed up after an anonymous complaint. Then animal control arrived to check welfare conditions. Then the fire marshal received a report that the equipment shed was storing hazardous materials. Each visit ended the same way: a brief inspection, no violation, and a polite look that suggested Eli was being used as a target for someone else's boredom or malice. The SUV's driver finally became impossible to ignore, not through conversation, but through pattern. The same vehicle, the same timing, the same aggressive arc around the bend by the pasture. It belonged to Marla, a board member who presented herself as the neighborhood's self-appointed guardian. Around the subdivision, she was treated like a rule book in human form. On Eli's land, she behaved like the rules were only for other people. Eli tried the reasonable route. He emailed the HOA with the easement language attached and asked for a reminder to residents about speed and access limits. The response was a polished deflection, implying Eli's hostility toward community integration was the real issue. Days later, a contractor truck arrived and dumped fresh gravel at the neighborhood entrance to the lane, widening the turn-in as if preparing it for heavier, faster traffic. That was when Eli realized the situation had crossed a line. This wasn't a neighbor cutting through. It was an HOA board member trying to transform a limited easement into a permanent convenience road by sheer force of habit, harassment, and paperwork intimidation. So Eli stopped reacting and started documenting. He installed 2 solar trail cameras angled for plates and speed estimation. He set discrete survey flags to mark the exact easement boundary. He logged dates, times, and every county visit triggered by anonymous calls. And he booked a consultation with a property attorney who explained the simplest truth. Eli didn't need to out-yell anyone. He only needed to outprove them. The harassment escalated anyway. Another complaint accused Eli of blocking public right-of-way. When Eli tightened his pasture gate to keep cars from cutting too close, someone clipped the chain and left it dangling open, letting goats wander toward the lane. It took Eli an hour of frantic herding to get them back, and when he reviewed the camera footage afterward, the SUV flashed past at a speed that made the animal's fear look inevitable. Eli's patience ran out in a calm, precise way. He chose a trap that wasn't reckless, wasn't violent, and wouldn't hurt anyone, just something that would make denial impossible. Eli coordinated with the county in the only language bureaucracy respected: evidence and liability. He submitted footage showing repeated speeding on a private agricultural lane with livestock present. He provided the deed, the easement terms, and the survey markers demonstrating where the HOA's community access fantasy ended. He emphasized the risk: an animal strike, a child wandering from the subdivision, a vehicle losing control near irrigation piping, and the county deputy assigned to traffic enforcement finally agreed to observe during a documented window. On the morning of the planned enforcement, Eli prepared the lane like a stage, without making it look like a stage. Near the bend where vehicles habitually accelerated, he spread a thin, harmless line of brightly tinted agricultural marking powder used for pasture management, safe, water-soluble, and common on farms. He placed it on his own property, on the private lane section where the easement did not grant casual resident access in the first place. The purpose wasn't to cause a skid, it was to leave a signature. He positioned cameras to capture approach, speed, and the moment tires crossed the line. He made sure the powder sat on a dry patch with no runoff risk, then waited in the quiet that always came right before trouble. The SUV arrived as predictably as sunrise. It entered from the neighborhood side with the same impatient angle, cutting the corner too tight. The tires struck the powder and threw it outward in a clean fan, painting the lower doors and rear quarter panel in a vivid streak that could be seen from 100 yards. In the same instant, the camera captured the plate, the timestamp, and the speed estimation based on measured distance between fixed markers. The deputy, parked just beyond the bend on an adjacent service turnout, saw the streaked vehicle and the obvious rate of travel. The stop happened within seconds. No chase, no drama, just immediate consequence. The SUV rolled to a halt beside Eli's fence line, and the powder's bright stain turned the vehicle into the confession. Marla's posture changed the moment she stepped out and saw the camera housings, the survey flags, and the deputy's calm certainty. What she'd treated like a private shortcut suddenly looked like what it always was: a farm lane with boundaries, with paperwork, and now with official attention. Eli didn't need to speak. The county didn't need to argue. The footage, the easement, and the marked vehicle did all the talking. The deputy documented the stop, noted the limited access restrictions, and treated it as a safety issue it was. The trap wasn't humiliation for sport. It was a clean, legal corner that Marla's behavior had backed her into. Later that week, at a scheduled county mediation session the HOA had demanded, Eli arrived with a folder that felt heavier than paper should. Speed logs, still frames, complaint records, the easement highlighted in plain language. When the HOA's claims collapsed under the first few pages, the room's energy shifted. For the first time, Marla wasn't the one generating pressure. She was the one trapped under it.
The aftermath moved faster than Eli expected, because once consequences became public, self-preservation took over. The HOA's attorney quietly advised the board to stop contacting Eli entirely. The violation letters ended overnight. The contractor graveling improvements ceased. The anonymous complaints to county offices stopped, as if someone had simply unplugged the machine that had been producing them. The county posted formal notice at the neighborhood entrance to the lane, clarifying that it was not a public roadway and that the easement did not authorize resident cut-through traffic. A simple barrier went up at the subdivision side, still allowing utility and emergency access, but preventing daily shortcuts. The HOA tried to frame it as an unfortunate change forced by an uncooperative landowner, but the community had already seen enough. A board member had been stopped on camera speeding through a farm lane where animals lived, then had used HOA power to retaliate. That story spread the way cautionary tales always do, fast and with judgment. Marla didn't vanish from the neighborhood, but her influence did. She lost her board seat in the next election cycle, not because Eli campaigned, but because the residents realized what her version of authority really looked like when it wasn't pointed at them. The HOA adjusted its policies about off-property enforcement and required board approval with legal review before sending any notice to a non-member property owner. It was a small reform born from a very public embarrassment. Eli's farm returned to the kind of quiet that felt earned. The goats stopped flinching at engine noise, the dust settled for good, and the lane, once treated like a privilege without cost, became what it always should have been, an access point with limits, not a shortcut with entitlement. In the end, Eli didn't defeat the HOA with anger or theatrics. He defeated it with boundaries, evidence, and patience sharpened into something unbreakable. If a community can be trained to respect a farm lane, what else could be fixed if more people stopped arguing and started documenting?